Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be talking to you about plotting ordered pairs on the coordinate plane. Alright, before we get started into some examples, let's take a look at some vocabulary you're going to need to know. First of all, what is an ordered pair? Well, an ordered pair is exactly what those two words say. They're a pair of numbers that are ordered for a reason. So basically you're looking at two coordinates, an x and a y. Okay, and what these two coordinates are going to tell you is where to place a point on the actual coordinate plane. So the x, first of all, let's get the x-axis, that's this one right here. When you're looking at the coordinate plane, you have the x-axis, which runs horizontally, and then you have the y-axis, which runs vertically. Alright, so we have x and we have y. Alright, so a quick example of what an ordered pair would look like is 2, 3. Here's your x, and here's your y. Okay, and so as I mentioned before, those help you determine where to place your point. Look at it as though you're doing directions. They're giving you directions on where to go. So the xy coordinate plane, as you can see, is directly up here, what I just drew. It's made up of those two, what we call axes, or axis, the x-axis and the y-axis. And then finally, it's a good thing to know what the origin means. That's kind of a fancy word that they use for the beginning, okay, which is always, when you move, always starts from the point 0, 0. So the origin is where the x and y-axis actually intersect. So let me highlight that for you on my little drawing here. That would be the origin, 0, 0. So when you do plot points, that's where you'll start. So let's take a look at a few examples here. And actually, before we get into examples, this is a key element, the 4 quadrants. You're going to need to know what the 4 quadrants are. This is your example down here of of a standard coordinate plane. Okay, you can see I have everything labeled there for you, the x-axis, the y-axis, but then you'll notice these numbers within each of these 4 squares that are made up of the intersection of the x and y-axis. Well, each of those 4 squares is a quadrant. Okay, and one of the main things to remember about that is that this order, 1 in the top right hand corner, 2 in the top left hand corner, 3 in the bottom left, and 4 in the bottom right. That order matters. Those quadrants don't change. So it's the only way students really get confused is that it runs counterclockwise, and we're not necessarily used to things running counterclockwise. But 1 is always in the top right. What you see above that is basically why they are what they are. So in other words, quadrant 1 is considered quadrant 1 because both values will be positive. When the two numbers in your ordered pair are positive, they will always end up in quadrant 1. When the two numbers in your ordered pair are a negative first and then a positive, they're always going to end up in quadrant 2. Okay? And then quadrant 3, all right, we have a negative and a negative. And then quadrant 4, we have a positive and a negative. So what those signs are showing are what the numbers, the sign of the numbers, have to be in order to fall in those particular quadrants. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here. These first few examples are just simply asking you what quadrant each of these numbers would, or each of these points would fall in. So again, if you want reference, let me just sketch one out here for you. Here's your coordinate plane. All right, and I'm not going to put the quadrants on there because I want you to try to figure them out as we go. But negative 9, 2. If we were plotting negative 9, 2, what I want you to think of, okay, is that we have a negative number and a positive number. Where is that going to end up putting me? Well, if you're not quite sure how to plot a point yet, you may not know. So that's where you would have to reference your little diagram that we showed you before. Negative 9, 2 would actually take you 9 places to the left and 2 places up, and I will get you doing that here in just a moment. But that point would actually end up falling in quadrant 2. So for that answer, you would say quadrant 2. All right, for the next example, we have 8, 3. 8, 3 is 2 positive numbers, and 2 positive numbers put you in quadrant 1. You would actually go to the right 8 and then up 3. So your point would be somewhere right in there. And that's actually quadrant 1. And this was quadrant 2. Rewrite that for you. And then the last one, you can see we have 2 negative numbers. Those 2 negative numbers are going to put you, in this case, to the left. Let me do that in a different color. You're going to go to the left 5 and down 3, which puts you in quadrant 3. Okay, and there is an order to it. Like I said, this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's just a different order and runs counterclockwise. So this is quadrant 3, and you'll see that we sometimes will write them using Roman numerals. Not a big deal if you don't. It's just something that they use from time to time to show that. If you're not familiar with Roman numerals, there's no problem in just writing 1, 2, 3, and 4 as you see me do right here. Okay? All right, so let's practice plotting a couple points here. One of the key elements to plotting a point is, again, remembering which is the x and which is the y coordinate. So first of all, a great way to remember that is x comes before y. It's alphabetical, so you'll never forget it if you just remember that. So plot 2, 5. Well, let's mark which one's which. X, then y. The reason why you need to know that is because those are the axes that you're going to move on. So you're going to move along the x-axis first, then the y-axis. So to plot 2, 5, first of all, 2, 5 is going to end up in the quadrant 1. So we know it's going to end up somewhere in here. We just need to figure out where. So these are the directions to do that. We're going to move to the right 2 along the x-axis, to the right 2, all right? And that puts us right there. Let me do a better job of that. 2. Here's 2, all right? And then we're going to move along the y-axis to 5, which would be right here. Okay, and what you're trying to do when you plot the point is figure out where those 2 points would meet as you move along the grid. Okay, and you see we move along the grid and they're going to actually meet right in there. Okay, so I'm going to actually just mark that now. We have 2, 5, which would be right there. Okay, and a lot of times they're going to want you to mark that with your ordered pair. 2, 5, like so. So again, I moved to the right 2 places, and then I moved up 5 places. X, then Y. X movement, then Y movement. Let's take a look at another one. All right, this time we have negative 5, 2. So again, first of all, go ahead and make sure you remember which is X and Y. Again, it's alphabetical. X comes before Y. So negative 5 means we need to move in the negative direction on the x-axis. Well, the negative direction, as you can see on the x-axis, is to the left as opposed to the right. So we're going to move 5 places to the left, which would put us right here. And then on the y-axis, we're actually going to move up 2 places to positive 2, which would put us right there. So where would these 2 points meet if they were running along the grid? You can see right there. Okay, and we'll go ahead and mark that now. So that's actually going to be negative 5, 2, which ends up being right there. Okay, and it really is as though you can take your fingers, put your finger on one number, put your finger on the other value, and just kind of move along until they meet. Let's take a look at one more. And this one I would like you to try on your own. I'm going to go over it, of course. Let's try to plot negative 3, negative 6, 2 negative numbers. And that actually means we're going to end up in quadrant 3. So negative 3 is located on the x-axis. Let me mark those for you again. Remember, you always need to know which one's first. So negative 3 would be located right here on the x. Negative 6 would be located right here on the y. So again, your job is to figure out where those 2 would meet. So you can see negative 6 would travel along this little grid line. Negative 3 would travel along this little grid line right here, and you can see they're going to end up crashing right there. Okay, and again, we call that point negative 3, negative 6. So let me mark that more clearly here. Negative 3, negative 6. Just like so. All right, and this has been a quick tutorial on plotting points on the coordinate plane. Thank you for joining me.